let's begin or continue our morning show here in Nhlanhla.
Well, this video of a primary school pupil from Krugersdorp caused quite a stir on social media after it went viral this week.
Well, these are just some of the scenes we've seen crop up over time and time again. Over the next few minutes, we'll be talking about the phenomenon and also look at how we can prevent this kind of behavior in the new year.
Joining us in studio are clinical psychologists Ruth Answer and Mano Ramadawa, a former principal and author who's written a book with tools for educators to tackle challenges in our schools.
And certainly before we get into that interview in Nhlanhla, I want us to take a look at one of those incidents that has taken place in schools.
Why are you doing this?
All right, and let's then kick off that conversation with Ruth Answer and Mano Ramadwa. Thank you both for getting up so early on a Sunday for us.
Thank you.
You know, the issue, I think, of what is happening in South African schools is perhaps a bit more nuanced than the extreme cases that we see of ill discipline, of violence. But nonetheless, all of them are important in terms of the actual learning that takes place and the issues that interject or get in the way of that learning. So let's begin perhaps with what we've seen in that video. The violence that continues to grab our headlines, and it seems to get worse and worse. Why is it so difficult to manage discipline in schools? And Tata Mano, you're a former principal. You've had to deal with this.
Yeah. Kathy, thank you very much, and your viewers at home. The issue of school or learner discipline in schools, it's a multidimensional process. But the majority of the times, you will find that it is actually perpetuated from home. But because of the situation and the nature of homes, various homes, when they come to school, those learners also demand a situation of acceptance here within the school situation. So our teachers need to be very understanding of what their responsibility is. Because if all children were to come to us ready-made to be taught and all that, our jobs, it's a very serious problem.
I want you to unpack what you mean when you say it's perpetuated from home.
Yeah, what I'm saying is we've got dysfunctional homes. We can't expect a child who comes from a dysfunctional home at the age of 12, 13, 14, which is a very dangerous age for all children, to come to class and become this university-like kind of student. We must understand that these are teenagers, but also having serious problems from home. We need to come to a point where we get into them and understand who they are and where they come from.
Ruth, as somebody who deals with the psyche, perhaps even behind this kind of behavior, do you agree?
Absolutely. I think that we have to look at the context, and we are living in a very violent society, and the pupils' behavior at school symbolizes and represents what is going on in the larger community. And I think you're absolutely correct in terms of we have to look at where the children come from in terms of the homes and the communities. And it is, when we see incidents at school, it is often about children who are angry, children who do not feel heard, and children who have been exposed to violence at home and at schools. I think there's still incidents of violence in schools despite corporal punishment being banned. I think research has shown that it still takes place. And in such a violent context, what we're seeing is understandable. It's horrific and it's devastating for the educators and for other learners. But it does represent what is going on. And when you get children from dysfunctional backgrounds in a community that is riddled with violence and aggression, this is what we see.
So Ntate Mano, just take us through some of the experiences for teachers. You know, when you have such incidents of learners attacking their teachers, and in some incidents even being killed by their learners, as we saw in one case of a pupil stabbing a teacher in class, what would you say are some of the major challenges that teachers face? Are teachers growing more? Are they working in a more stressful environment? Are they feeling unsafe? And if so, how do they defend themselves against some of these learners?
I think it's a situation where we need to accept that teachers are in the spotlight first, but their job is also very demanding. one individual goes and faces 50 students who think differently, who come from 50 different homes, and that on its own, it creates a demand for the teacher to understand all of them. But at the same situation, the kind of cases that we are seeing of such learners who are so rude, we cannot actually deal with them by saying, how can they defend? Because the minute you put in defense, you are already in the violent mode. What we need to do is we need to get to a point where these children, you know, every school has a code of conduct.
Yeah.
And the majority of times, the cases that you see are not first-time offenders. So it means that somewhere along the way, the school system failed the teacher. Because if this was picked up earlier and dealt with appropriately in manners that would assist, every school is supposed to have a school-based support team. That on its own, it's a comfort zone for the children who are like that, because the more they disclose the situations at home, the more the teachers who are tasked with that responsibility understand and communicate this. In the long run, the teacher and the learner, they get to understand one another. But if we don't do that, then we leave the teachers at the mercy of this kind of violence.
So in your book, you touch a lot on the conduct of teachers. How can learners, or rather teachers, interact with their learners, especially in such an environment where learners can be disrespectful towards their teachers, where learners can even be violent towards their teachers? How does an educator deal with that? Do you walk away from a student who's hurling insults at you, or maybe attacking you with some form of an object?
It's very technical, because you walk away, you leave 49. And when you leave 49 and something happens in the class, then you're still in trouble. Here is my take on it. Every time when a teacher goes into the class, you need to be spiritually prepared to deal with these children. And as you go in, you find the children and they are at such kind of situation. Make friends. You know, in one of the addresses that I make, I talk about relationships. A teacher must actually create 3 different types of relationships. There must be a relationship of a mentor and mentee. When you're dealing with such a relationship, it means that you are raising this child to grow to become somebody else that you will be proud of. There must be a parental relationship. Once you grow that, you don't have a problem of a child now responding badly to you because this child understands you're a parent. There must also be a friendship, which is a very a kind of relationship that has a very thin line, because many teachers end up not controlling that. So there must be that friendship where, you know, when I am a friend of yours, I am able to talk to you about even how I feel. So that on its own, if a child is feeling distressed by whatever, or tempted to get into drugs, because she or he is talking to a friend, they are able to communicate, and these issues can be mediated.
Ruth, let me bring you in here. Often the videos that we see are of what happens in township schools, in rural schools. I think perhaps outside of Parktown Boys and a few of the other bullying incidents, we don't often get to see what happens behind the scenes at Model C or even at private schools. But when you then I think locate this understanding of violence as stemming from the home, is it a class issue also, or do you find it across the board?
I think what happens is we've got to look at the structure of schools, and with well-organized schools that are resourced, we don't see the kind of overt violence like that. I think what we've been talking about in terms of that relationship, while it's important, it places a lot of burden on teachers who are already overstressed. What we need is structures within schools. We need to put pressure on government and on the Department of Education to make sure that there are social supports. The teachers need support, the teachers need training, but there needs to be counseling for children, there needs to be education for parents, there needs to be someone who can do the kind of things that you've been speaking about. It's very hard to expect teachers to be dealing with the emotional issues with the children as well as trying to educate. And I think that where we're looking at better run schools with strong SGBs and a lot of support from the community, those schools have those facilities. They have social supports. They have psychologists or social workers. So problems they can pick up problems more easily. What we're dealing with in a lot of the schools where we're seeing that overt violence is that as you said, that there could be incidents prior to this, that there's no safety net. And we're seeing angry children who feel anonymous. When you are teaching 50 or 60 children, how can children feel like they belong? So there is the sense that they can get away with it, and there's also the sense of their voices are not heard, which is why there isn't a feeling that they are valued, that there's a purpose, that anyone cares.
Isn't that placing too much pressure on a system that's overloaded with children, that is overloaded with in terms of administrative issues and the actual teaching that needs to take place? So realistically, while that sounds like a dream, when we look at our reality now, it's almost intangible. So what are the steps that we can put in with what we have today to try and make the environment a bit more conducive without relying on more funding or more resources, because we can't even provide the basic norms and standards in education. So, what you're talking about, it sounds great, but I'm also thinking we might never get there.
But we need to prioritize it, because otherwise this is going to continue and it's going to get worse. So it has to become a priority, because otherwise we might be dealing with one child and one incident, but we're not looking at multiple incidents that will continue to happen. It is a crisis.
Mr. Ramadwa, how does the community collectively also begin to get involved? Because, it's clear, and this is by no means disrespecting the Department of Education, but they have their hands full, and certainly waiting for them to prioritize it, we might still be here in 30 years' time having this conversation. Unfortunately, it's the state of affairs.
It's very difficult, but here is what the schools can do. The department has provided mechanisms in terms of the SGB and how the appointments can be made. But Kathy, everything lies with leadership. Leadership in schools have failed many times and in many instances. When the minute you look at that incident of a child, and you look at a simple thing that many people don't look at, we discussed that on social media. Who took the video of that situation? Was in a school, in the admin block. 90% of what I'm thinking is that the video was taken by a teacher. It's a failed system. You can't have a teacher taking a video of a serious situation like that. Because if you simply say you're taking that video, you're simply now saying that I need some evidence. You can't need an evidence like that when you are supposed to just deal with the issues according to the code of conduct and run the proper system of the school. But management, sometimes and many times in township schools and village schools, we are having a problem of people who are there who don't understand what they should be doing.
It's a very important discussion there, Kathy.
I think before we let you go, just this issue of who took the video, just for better understanding, are you saying that the video shouldn't have been taken, or are you saying that there should have been intervention while the video was being taken?
My point is, look at the child who's sitting down. That child who's sitting down is now on the video and is not the one that is causing the fracas. So we are already exposing children in a if you go to the code of ethics of teachers, we are the protectors of those children. Now I can't protect the child and still expose him on social media. How did that video end up on social media? Because if it was taken for evidence purpose, then it should have remained in the office. But if it is now on social media, it means that somewhere along the way, someone did not do right.
Ntate Ramadwa, as a parting shot, what message would you give to your peers or other educators who may be feeling disheartened, judging by incidents like we're seeing as of late?
I'm a product of education. I'm a product of a teacher. You're a product of a teacher. Our job is more than important. And every teacher out there, regardless of the challenge that they have actually faced, they must understand that they have a role to play. This country is resting solely on the strength of the teachers, and we must just take up responsibility and do what is best within our strengths and collectively move together and take up this responsibility. Every school the principal, when the principal is not doing right, but we have 35 teachers, those teachers can make the school function because they understand.
Ruth, your final comment.
I do think that it is a very difficult time for teachers where instead of focusing on how to inspire children to learn and be excited about learning, they're thinking about their own safety. And I do feel that being able to turn to colleagues for support, having responsive leaders within the school is useful. And I think it is just a very stressful task for teachers, but I also think that when the teachers get through to the students, because we're not talking about all the students, I think that that can be so important because teachers change lives. Teachers can be superheroes, and I think that sometimes we lose sight of how precious and valuable teachers are when we only focus on these difficult incidents.
Oh, they absolutely are superheroes. At least I think the majority of them. You know, their hearts and their minds are in the right places. Thank you all for coming into studio this morning, and that was our guest, clinical psychologist Ruth Ansa, and author Mano Ramatwa.